Greetings, my name is Monty Martin and welcome back to Isadora 101. In this series of video tutorials, I'm going to be showing you the core features and functionality of Isadora 3. But by now we've come quite a long way. We've learned about movie playback, media playback in Isadora, and we have also learned a lot about some of the more advanced features in Isadora 2, such as value scaling and using the various generators. We're going to start putting all this knowledge together now as we explore the video actors in Isadora. Now, these video effects actors are extremely diverse. There are so many of them, and all of them have unique functionalities, but they all work on a similar principle. All of these video effects actors, some of which are floating up on the screen here, are actors that we are going to put in the video feed from somewhere between the source and the destination, such as in between the movie player and the projector actor, and they are going to alter the visual qualities of that video stream in some way, shape, or form according to the parameters that we set out for that specific actor. I'm going to be showing you today a few of my favorite video effects actors, and we're going to look at a few more as well in future tutorials on video compositing as well. But the best way to learn any of the other video effects actors is through experimentation. I encourage you today to pick up a very small piece of media that you find visually compelling, perhaps one that loops nicely in an interesting way. Something that's got a lot of movement and dynamism to it is very, very handy when you're trying to learn how the video effects actors work. Just grab that one media file. Of course, you can always use some of the example files that we started off our tutorial series with as well if you don't have anything of your own to use. Pick one and work with that so you can really explore the different effects that the various video effects actors can achieve. I'm going to go import some media into Isadora right now, and then let's start taking a look at how these actors work. All right, let's get to work. I put together a simple patch here that has some imported media in it, as well as a movie player and a projector, and a handful of actors that I'd like to play with as we explore how the video effects actors work. The first thing that we'll actually need to do is integrate one of the video effects actors into our current chain of the movie player and the projector. This is actually very easy to do. We're going to start off by breaking the link between the movie player and the projector, and taking the video effects actor that we want to build into the chain, just putting it in a reasonable spot, and we connect the video out of the movie player into the video in of the colorizer or any other video effects actor, and the video out of the colorizer into the projector. And there's our video feed. Now, we aren't quite seeing an impact yet, but before we talk about what the actor's actually doing, let's just look at a couple quick methods to make that process of integrating it a little bit quicker. First of all, if I've decided that I've messed around with this colorizer and I'm just not interested in doing it at all, working with it, it's just not doing it for me, I can just click it, delete it, and Isadora automatically heals the link between my movie player and my projector. Just like that. I don't need to reestablish the link. Now, alternatively, if I'm like, maybe that was actually a good idea, let's put that back in there. Instead of needing to break the link, I can get a colorizer out again. And with any of the video effects actors, where they're going from one video in to one video out along the top portion of the actor here, we can actually click them, drag them over top of a straight link, and the link will turn yellow, like so. I can release it, and Isadora drops the actor right into the link between my movie player and my projector. Sometimes you might have to just drag things out so that the link is a bit longer so you've got enough space for this to happen. But this is a really quick way to play with the various video actors. If you decide, again, that you don't like the colorizer, you want to try the HSL adjust instead, it's just as simple as that, as dropping them in or out. But I do want to show you how these work, so I'm going to bring them back on in, and let's play with them now. So I'm going to put this colorizer into my chain. And as we said before, even though it's in the chain, it's not having any impact. The video image looks exactly the same as it did before. This is because many of the video effects actors actually need us to alter their properties in some way before we see an effect happen. And I will also say that not all video effects will pair nicely with every piece of media that you use, particularly pieces of media that are extremely fast moving, extremely still, or have extreme color or contrast. You might get some strange looking results. Sometimes these strange looking results can be extraordinarily beautiful. But don't get discouraged if you're not happy with what you're looking at. Continue to play around and see what you get. Most video effects actors also have a bypass input at the very bottom of the actor. This allows us to quickly shut off the effect as if we deleted it from the chain without actually removing it. So this is a useful toggle if you're using several video effects and you want to compare, oh, did that actually have an impact in the way that I think it did? Rather than needing to delete everything and lose all the properties that you've messed with. So the colorizer, beyond the bypass and the video input, the colorizer only has 3 inputs: red, green, and blue. And you can probably guess what they do already. They're going to alter the amount of red, green, and blue that is passing through the video to its destination. In fact, the colorizer actually has a graphical representation of what's going on, and many of the video effects sectors have these little handy monitors built right into them as well. Let's see what happens. If I click on the red field, I can now increase the amount of red in my video stream or decrease the amount of red in my video stream. I can do the same with green as well, amping it up or pulling it out. And finally, the same with the amount of blue, either increasing it, quite a subtle shift there, or removing it. A little bit more of a CSI vibe now. Now, this alone can have a wonderful impact on any of the video that you're using, whether that is live video or a pre-recorded asset. And we can use things like our wave generator actors from earlier to connect these to any of these properties to animate them or automate them in real time. If I slow down this wave generator perhaps to 0.01 hertz, it's going to create a much more gradual and timed effect. You may be even able to use your generators in time with what's happening in the visual effect as well. So these can create both automated and manual adjustments that can happen in very gradual ways. Perhaps I like this shift that's happening with the wave generator, and instead of using it in that way, what I would rather do is use an envelope generator to achieve a similar shift. Plug that up over into my green, but one that's cued to the keyboard watcher, just as we saw before. And that can create a shift that we can control manually. Or instead, maybe I will connect one of these properties, or maybe more of them, to my mouse watcher and allow that to be something that is controlled with the mouse instead. So we can see how we can, just with one simple actor, the colorizer, and using the mouse watcher, envelope generator, and the wave generator, or our own judgment, we can change the visual quality of the video that we are playing out. Now, the colorizer is but one of many actors that we can use in this way, and it has a close cousin in the HSL adjust actor, or the hue, saturation, and luminance adjust. I'm going to plug that in here now instead. And the HSL adjust, instead of allowing us to control the RGB, allows us to control hue, saturation, and luminance. So we can get some slightly different effects here, such as moving the color through the entire color spectrum in a little bit more of a subtle fashion with the hue offset. We can also increase the amount of saturation in the video stream, creating this kind of oversaturated look when it's turned up to 100, or in fact desaturating the video entirely. When saturation is 0, it makes it black and white. Cool thing to have in your back pocket if you like that kind of noir aesthetic. And of course, the luminance will let us adjust how bright the video is. So again, we can kind of blow it out by turning out the luminance to 100, or we can pull it all the way out to black by bringing that to 0. But somewhere in between, we might be able to get just the effect that we're looking for. So sometimes, again, this is an example of how the extremes of one end of the spectrum or the other with a video effects actor can produce just black and white. But by varying the settings in between, we might be able to get something that is quite interesting and perhaps even pretty, right? Turning the saturation down, altering the hue offset just a little bit, and cranking the luminance up can get some very dramatic looking effects out of what was a pretty normal looking video to begin with. So I like to keep both of these actors in my toolbox. I particularly use the HSL adjust quite often. There's one other fun one here, which is the negative, which can just flip the whole thing around if we need to. So if you need to make black white and white black in any of your videos, remember that the negative actor exists and it does it in a single pinch. The dots actor is one of the most well-loved actors in Isadora, and it only takes me plugging it into this video some jellyfish for you to see why it can be such a compelling and interesting actor. When I plug it in here, it transforms the entire video feed into an array of dots. We can actually transform the size of these dots, making them either very, very small and very fine, or much larger instead, and varying the dimensions and distance, and even applying a little bit of color to the dots as well, simply shifting the hue just a little bit of the various dots by modifying the dot color and the SRC color of the dot as a whole. And you can see that even though I'm playing this video of the jellyfish, by now it's almost unrecognizable as what it was originally, although we've got something interesting nonetheless happening here. The dots can also be shifted into different shapes, the boxes as well, and I love using the dots actor to create a really environmental sort of effect. By varying things like the dot size, we can almost get a glimpse of what the original video was, but as soon as we make it much larger, it starts to become more and more abstract. I really, really love this effect, and I come back to it time and time again to create subtle mood-like features in my own designs. In particular, even just doing something as simple as connecting that wave generator, as we did before, to the dot size and slowing it down allows us to really simply oscillate between the extremes. This is another area where we will want to keep our value scaling in mind again, because perhaps I don't want the dots to get this large. So I'll simply click on the actor property and say that the maximum dot size is perhaps 10 here. And that way we get something that's a little bit more constrained when we're using the wave generator in this way. Continuing our theme of color and abstraction, I want to point out a very useful actor that, in addition to creating some very interesting visual effects, is also quite useful in lots of other areas, particularly those of you that might be interested in working with sensors and live video. And this is the threshold actor. I'm going to pop it into my feed right now. The threshold actor reduces your video to two colors only, a bright color and a dark color. So I'm going to define my bright color here as green and my dark color here as, perhaps in this case, I might go ahead and make that white. Maybe we'll make the bright color purple for now. And then the threshold value of the threshold actor sets a median threshold between light and dark. Anything under that threshold becomes the dark color by default, and anything over that threshold becomes the bright color. So watch what happens as we plug in again, we'll get a slow moving wave generator, and we'll move this one to a sawtooth phase so we can really see it, and connect that to the threshold. An interesting reveal and disappear. Let's slow that down even more so we can see the difference here. You'll notice that with lower thresholds, I get a little bit more of that image appearing. But with higher thresholds, I get less and less. As well as extreme low thresholds, I just get the entirety of the bright color. Once again, that idea of finding an interesting medium between the most extreme edges to produce a visible image. We can play around with the colors here as well, perhaps even transforming one into green and another into an aqua blue. I find the threshold actor is quite compelling when used with live video as well. Let's just take a quick look at this. I'm going to grab a video in Watcher. I have my live video set to capture from the built-in webcam on my laptop. So I'll start my live capture. There I am down there. And instead, I'll disconnect the movie player and I will reconnect the video in Watcher to the threshold actor. And you can see much clearer now just how dramatic we can get, particularly with faces. I love this sort of thing of the eyes, the nose, and the mouth, and the hands. It's very Andy Warhol, in my opinion. I quite like it. And by changing around the different colors, we can get some really, really stunning visual effects around the human face and the human figure once that is brought into the mix. We can go a little bit further with this as well, perhaps even combining this, because we can feed one actor into the next. Let's see what happens when we grab the dots actor from before and plug it into the mix. Let's bring that dot size down. Oh, that is something real cool looking. I like that. Maybe even add a little bit more to the threshold. Yeah. Oh, look at that. That's a cool effect. I really like how the kind of the spotted, speckled sort of cartoon almost effect is created like this. Maybe if we change the bright color though to just make that a little bit more visible. Yeah, quite interesting, eh? Just with the way we can combine two actors together to produce a really interesting visual effect that is more than just the sum of its parts. And all I needed to do there was plug one actor into the next and into the next. This is how we unlock the full creative potential of Isadora, because we can build chains of all of our actors from one to the next, combining one and another and another and another, and building the effects on top of each other successively to produce something more. Let's try this. I'm going to now add into this chain a motion blur. I don't know quite what's going to happen when I do this, but I'm curious to find out. Oh, love that. Now, just like that, I have a very dramatic effect, and I don't need to change much about the motion blur actor to increase the level of this effect, but if I were to decrease the decay amount, the motion trail and the blur will persist even longer, eventually overwhelming the entire field. Whereas if I decrease that delay, the decay amount, we'll get something that is much more fading. And the more I move, the more indistinct my position becomes with this result. Whereas if I now go here and I change the accumulation amount, let's see what that's going to do. I'll turn that down to 1. Ooh, see, I almost disappear entirely, right? You just get the smallest spectrum of my movement. Let's turn that up to 5. Means that I have to hold still a little bit longer before the blur effect comes into play. These are so much fun to play with. And as you layer one effect on top of another, your imagination is bound to go absolutely wild with all the possibility of what you can create. I'm going to set that back to the default values though, because I actually quite like the initial effect that I created there. And maybe I'll just vary that threshold a little bit. No, see, I like the threshold where it is there because it takes out just enough of the green screen background to really create an interesting image, particularly with the way that it cuts out my whole beard too. So we'll keep that around 60. So I encourage you to simply be playful and explore how these different effects can all be combined together, layered on top of each other. Be aware that this combination is sequential. So we can actually get different results depending on the way we order the effects on top of each other. Let's watch and see an example of this. If I take the motion blur out of the chain, I'm just going to disconnect it. I'm not going to delete it. And instead, I put the motion blur at the very front of the chain, right off the video in Watcher. You'll see that it actually created a completely different sort of looking effect from what we had earlier, because the motion blur is now being applied before the threshold is, which changes the visual quality of the image coming into the threshold actor. And so I don't quite get that cool spectral blurring effect because threshold and dots are being applied after the motion blur. So now if I take this out of where I placed it, and I place the motion blur in between, well, I still get a little bit of that, but dots is being applied last. So you can see that I get a little bit of that motion trail, but rather than being flattened the way that it was before, the dots actor is receiving the motion blur that's been applied to the threshold. Now you can see how these layer on, and this is where the bypass becomes really handy, because if I turn the bypass of the dots off, we can actually now see what is happening with the threshold and the motion blur to create this effect first. And if I turn the motion blur off, we can see the raw impact of the threshold actor being applied. We could go the other way around with this too, turning the motion blur back on and leaving the dots off, turning threshold off, and see how motion blur just affects my own movement in a very raw form before either threshold or dots are even applied. And see, that standard sort of blurry motion there that we would expect from a motion blur. And then if I just add dots on top of that by turning the bypass off, see, it's not quite, it's a little more of a pixelated sort of effect that we've got now. Whereas once all of them are on together, it totally changes the dynamic at play. So the order that we put the effects in the chain matters. It makes a difference. That is one of the most important things when we are combining our effects together. And as we layer more and more and more together, it can become more and more difficult to determine what the individual impact of one of these actors is. And that's why it can be very useful to use the bypass to turn things on and off, so you don't have to go through that manual process of disconnecting, reconnecting, deleting things, and changing things. You can preserve the individual settings of each actor and just see what happens somewhere along the way in the chain. And of course, now if we applied any sort of animations to this whole thing, it could totally change that dynamic there as well. Once again, bringing in that wave generator into this makes something very, very different now on top of the whole thing. But this is one more of those cases where, were I to put the motion blur in a different spot in the chain with this animation, let's see what's going to happen now. The movement of the dots is being blurred by the motion blur. It's not just the movement of the video. So I produce something very, very different, and I have to consider how each stage and each animation is potentially going to affect the later sequences of that chain, because it doesn't always behave in an exactly intuitive manner as these things get moved from one actor to the next. We can create things that are very abstract and pretty cool loops, like this one over here. So that is just a small sampling of some of what is possible with Isadora's video effects actors. Again, this is just a very, very small segment of what is out there. So I want to remind you of one more thing: the help text box. When you are experimenting with the video effects actors, don't forget that you can mouse over any of the actors themselves, and you will get a short explanation telling you exactly what that actor does. And you can also mouse over its various properties for a brief explanation of what that property itself does. So as you experiment with all of the other video effects actors, and as you can see, there's quite a lot of them, keep this in mind. The help text is there to guide you as you experiment and create something from your own mind and make that a reality. That's all for this workshop. I hope you'll join me in the next time. We're going to continue looking at the different combinations of actors and going into some more of the intermediate and advanced Isadora features. So we're starting to come to the tail end of Isadora 101. Hope that you're starting to feel like you're really grasping all of the power and potential that Isadora offers you. As always, there are so many great resources out there for learning more about Isadora. Be sure to visit our community forums as well as our Facebook groups so that you can talk with other Isadora users and share creative ideas for various combinations of video effects actors. I'm certain if there's something that you have in your mind that you're not quite able to figure out the right combo, someone in the Isadora community is going to be more than happy to help you crack the code behind that. Of course, some of our awesome Isadora gurus here on YouTube, like Mark and Ryan, are also creating more and more awesome examples of how you can combine various Isadora actors to produce some very beautiful generative graphics and special effects. So be sure to check those out as well here on YouTube, and I'll see you at the next workshop.